at the entire connected car business today, I mean, I was just reading yesterday or the day before that it's going to be close to 45 billion in terms of revenues by 2015. 1 in 2 cars would be somehow connected. By that mean would be through another app or maybe through a Bluetooth device, and probably 1 in 5 would have some sort of an embedded connectivity to it. So I see a huge, big platform. I'm sure your discussions this morning have been going around that. What I wanted to do is talk to you more about what we've been doing, how I see the future going, and what are some of the perspectives that are probably more towards electric vehicles and newer technologies going through that. So drivers that I see, we talked earlier too, one is regulation, especially I see that in Europe with a lot of emergency systems coming through, and in Russia. So that I think that would be one big driver that would drive it. For me, it's the consumer a lot, the wow features that he wants in terms of internet radio or a host of other features. Diagnostics is going to be a large portion of it. Costs to manage things are very expensive today globally. And probably safety, especially car to car, is going to become very important. So I think these are going to be what I see 4 large drivers in the next decade that look at how we see connected cars going. Where we've been in some form or the other working with the last 15 years in connected cars. So our cars that we launched in 2001 stored 3 years of data on board. You could actually take a Palm Pilot and plug it into your car, and you could actually access your stuff and run the equivalent of what apps you have today 10 years ago. And it was our first level of connecting with consumers. It was our first level of understanding the importance of data. And I think these were the basis of what we do today, because what we figured out that when we collected 200 million kilometers of data in 24 countries is that vehicles being used in Norway at -20 in the winter are very different from Delhi at 45. And the way vehicles work would be very different. And so we actually found this insights extremely valuable in how we structured our work going forth on this area. Around in 2005, we did our first tablets where we actually had a Linux-based system which had completely everything online, similar to what you see today. And the new car we launched 3 months ago is online. Every car comes with a SIM card on it. Every car is connected. We can give you an Android or an iPhone or a BlackBerry app, and you have full connectivity on your car. The drivers of this were important to understand the history, because I think we always came from a consumer side of it or a certain challenge that we faced in the industry and how we went about it. So let me take the first part of it as diagnostics. When we started exporting to Europe, especially to countries like Norway, we found that even after we trained the best of mechanics from the top OEMs globally who were part of our distribution network, they thought they knew everything, and 3 months later when there's a problem with the vehicle, invariably we're getting calls, they're trying to figure out issues. And we found that 80% of the time was in diagnosis, and 20% of the time was to fix the car. At €100 an hour, we couldn't afford that at all on this area. So our whole idea was to start to think of diagnostics completely online. We put a fleet of around 75 vehicles in 2009 into Norway, which were online, and learned for 3 years, and then introduced it as a consumer product. So the first 3 years was completely our cost, no one paid anything, but it was a great learning for us to understand networks, how people communicated, what are the challenges we would have, what the customer tells you and what the car tells you are completely different things, and how do you correlate this data and make it happen. Now, I think that was fundamental diagnostics, but we're now taking that to probably a different step further, which was trying to understand that can you go into prognostics. So if you think of your battery in your cell phone today, well, you find it's bad, but when it's bad is the day you couldn't talk right through till the evening. Actually, 3 months ago, the problem started. So if you're online, we can actually project it, and I can bring your car in 3 months beforehand to service, fix the problem for you, and you never knew there was a problem in your car. Certain things that we tested, for example, we had to test once in 3 years the battery capacity and understand what the range is. This process took us 3 to 4 days in a service center. Today, we can do it online at night in your car and fix it for you and check it and have all the reporting. It's cost me zero compared to several €100 it would cost us. So there's a very big driver: reduce cost, reduce consumer time in terms of increased customer satisfaction. So the entire focus was, why do we need to service cars anymore? If today someone logs on to your computer at work and fixes your computer, and an IT guy no more comes to your workstation. Why are we coming to your car? So by challenging something very fundamental, I think we got a lot of innovation into areas which I think today will save us a tremendous amount of money as we look at it. The third area was R&D optimization. We found that when cars drove in London were very different than in Bangalore. We had to collect a host of data to understand how driving patterns work. We then analyzed this data, and then we rewrote software algorithms which enabled us to improve around range by 5%. Batteries are 40% of your cost to your vehicle, or 30%. So if I can improve range by 5%, I'm reducing your cost by 2%. It's very high value. If I can do that in real time, that is great. So our learnings now to say, how can I do this in real time and enable the R&D team to understand that and get performance enhancements related to this, which then translate to very valuable customer perceptions. The last was with consumer, and I think actually this came at the end. It came more from diagnostics and things when we looked at connectivity. But then we started to see what are the key challenges for consumers and where would connectivity make the most sense. And I'll give you one example. We have a technology called Revive, and this is an emergency charge that you can get, range anxiety, address range anxiety. So if you ever fall low on charge, all you got to do is press a button on your smartphone or on your touchscreen in your car, and within 30 seconds, you will have around 8 to 10 kilometers range and you can get home. Now, the consumer insight around that was customers kept coming to our showroom and saying, hey, yeah, I have the electric car, you have the gauge, but I'm still concerned. And then you find out that he says, listen, I'm buying this car for my wife. She's going to take my 3-year-old kid to school tomorrow. And what if this car stops like my mobile phone did last night? So the anxiety is because of technology in another area translated to another space. So we said, okay, what if you can give you an emergency charge? Now, the back end of this meant the way you drive and I drive is very different. The way a car behaves in 1 year and 5 years is very different. The way a car behaves in Norway and India are very different. So if real time I have data, I know how you drive, I know your energy consumption pattern, I know your usage pattern, I know how the battery is, I'm connected to you in real time, I can do an algorithm for you in real time to understand at that point what you need and optimize the battery reserve energy without damaging the battery. So it's coming from a consumer insight onto creating certain key challenges that customers had and then translating it into connected car technology that would make difference. Now, of course, you have all the standard features. You can turn your AC on, you can schedule your AC, you can turn on charge, you can lock and unlock your car, you go on vacation, press a button, the batteries come down to a normal state of charge, and a host of other features that are today available to you, which I would say are kind of nice to have wow features, but they're not what I would call essential areas on differentiation. So those will come in, but maybe customers are not going to pay for those. But when you tell someone that, listen, if you're ever stuck, press this button, and you can get home to the next charging station and shows you charging stations. You have 100 in Bangalore, so within 5 kilometers. Then you say, this is a feature that I need today to address my concern. Then around that, we built a host of other areas that enable people to pay for it. So from an EV perspective, when you think of it, range, the limited energy, the fact that things are online, every sensor is online. We have over 150 parameters available in our bus, which we can access, control. Enables connected cars to be far easier. And it also makes it more useful to have connectivity. So for example, if you today log on to our navigation system, it is talking to the car computer. It tells you how far you can go. It has a circle. It's looking at your distance to empty. It's real-time updating it. So now you're connecting devices together in an area that's quite different. And I think that's where you probably see a lot of this happening here. So where do I see this go in the future? Well, I think that this stuff we talked about is now fundamental. It's hygiene. The fact that you have Bluetooth, you have your cars online, you can do diagnostics, you can have internet radio, you can do all this stuff. This is, I think, mundane stuff today. Well, what is the next few years going to look at? So I see 5 key areas here. One I see is looking at the car-to-car communication. And I think that's going to bring in a set of new safety areas that you can do a lot more. Car to infrastructure, the fact that you can hook up with lights, the fact that you can hook up with other cameras, the fact that you can understand what's happening around the corner is going to be another different area of looking at how you see what the future could be on this area. Car to home. I mean, think of a convenience not as a technology. So if I'm driving home, what do I want? When I'm 5 kilometers away from home, I want my car home air conditioning on, and I want to walk into a cool room. I want to, on my way, if something is not in my fridge, I want to make sure I can shop on the way and do it. So I want connectivity that makes a difference in my life. What makes a difference in my life? How do I connect these places? Then connectivity makes sense to me. Otherwise, it doesn't. So I think the aspects are going to be more consumer-oriented and not technology-driven to say, I'm going to give you this kind of app on this area. Connectivity on car to grid. Today, our cars are all online. We can actually feed back energy to the grid. So last year, we had an entire Delhi went off. You know, you had a huge outage of power. Now, imagine if you had 100,000 electric cars. Each car could give you back around 10 kilowatts, around 1,000 megawatts of power. So at 10 o'clock, when all you guys turn on your AC and you have a big peak of energy, you can actually feed the grid back. So you have two forms of connectivity. You have energy connectivity, and you have your mobile connectivity. Now, when you combine the two together, very powerful, because I can sell you energy at 15 bucks a unit in the morning when you need it. I'll buy it at 2 rupees a unit at 3 in the morning. So I can then look at a host. Then I can manage this in the back end, because now the moment you have 100,000 available, think of the strength of 100,000. You can do things far bigger when you're connected in this area, on this front, which is not powerful. So the power of connectivity of multiple vehicles in terms of understanding traffic, understanding safety, understanding grid conditions, become a whole set of business opportunities that don't even exist today because of how you look at connectivity on this area. And I think data analytics and partnerships are going to drive this tremendously, because it's not something you can do everywhere. It's actually creating these partners and looking at it. If I see 3 or 4 challenges going forward, in our experiences, one is going to be security. As we give more information of our car, right now it's very challenging that people can access stuff. The moment I tell you can unlock my car, it starts to become a security issue. So while we give more features, the other challenge is managing security at this area, right? Business models, we talked about this earlier. You've got to make money out of this. And it's challenging. You know, when we launched just 3 months ago, we were trying to give this full future mobility package, talk to customers how important this is. And it is challenging to communicate this. So we today offer it as full part of the car and included everything as one-off. I think over time, we are working on these models. But I think this is going to become an issue for all of us, that while you have technologies, how will consumers pay for it? What will they be willing to pay for it? And today, when you can download apps for free and buy software for 99 cents, the expectation of everyone is at that level of paying. And so that's going to be an important thing of creating a sustainable business models around this area. I think standardization and common platforms are going to become very important. The power of connectivity is when 10,000 cars, 100,000 cars can all connect to each other. And if they had standard platforms of communicating across this and data across this, become very powerful. If this was opened up to third parties and they created apps on that, it becomes very powerful. Will automakers do that? I don't know. Are we open to that? Yes, because I think that's the power. Having seen what's happened with Android and seeing what's happened with a lot of the open architecture systems, I think they've been far more successful. So I think people will move towards that by keeping a set of security protocols and beyond that looking at it. But I think there'll be a game change when you have common platforms across multiple OEMs that you can access the same relevant data of information on this area. So to me, it's kind of a really exciting thing, and I think we're very right in that first quadrant space of innovation. We've got what I call hygiene things in place. We've got base connectivity in place, and we've got this whole canvas to paint ahead of us in all these business areas. I don't think there'll be revenues a year or two down the line, but I think 5 years from today, probably I would say 90% of cars are potentially going to be connected, and the connection to the connection is going to make the big difference, because then you will have value streams created which you can't even imagine today, which are purely related on what your side of the business is, but not connecting it with some other one's business. Thank you.
I have just one quick question. While the connectivity is very important from multiple perspectives, how would it impact on the safety perspective of a driver? Because his span of attention from a safety perspective, how is this going to evolve? Because I think that is also being debated globally about how connected cars and the future of connected cars is going to span out in the next 10 years.
I think connected cars need to make your life simpler. So, you spend 8 hours at home, 8 hours at work, and the third place is your car. It's your third space. So, making your third space more productive and entertaining is going to be critical. It has to be safer in that perspective. And so, therefore, new interfaces, new ways of communicating, new ways of knowing how you want while you're driving. Is it your music coming in and then your navigation? Is it the fact that the road is blocked and I'm going to take a different route? Is that the fact that my sensor senses my pulse rate being differently and changes my music? It's a host of things that are seamless that you're not aware of. And so it's a cleverness in connectivity that's going to make a difference. It's not the screen that you look at and say, I'm going to touch it and access it. I think that's very basic. I think it's going to go far beyond that.
Something like an app marketplace developing for an M2M kind of thing, because people will just want to download something and have it on their cars.
Yes, I do see that. So today we actually have an app store for our product. So you can actually go and we have a couple of apps. And we're actually debating how we could put some standard APIs and also give the access to that. Because you got to realize the car has a host of other things. You may have a G sensor from your ABS system, which then can be used to create some kind of game, right, and things like that. So if you can get access to the sensor data, we don't even know what you're going to do with it, honestly. Today I take your smartphone and you use the camera and the flash to check your pulse rate. Nobody figured that you could use these two devices to check your pulse rate. So I think that's what's going to happen. And I think the challenge, I said, of talked of security, is that if we can get the right security levels, we have common APIs, then I think you can probably have a very different level of apps.
Just from your experience, the M2M or the connected car from an EV perspective versus conventional fuels, you think these are two different streams, or they are going to converge, at least on this side?
I think they will converge, but I think there are going to be a set of EV-related features that are going to be more unique, and there are going to be a set of features that are going to be more important. So, for example, navigation and understanding route mapping and range integration is very important because you have limited energy, right? A consumer who's buying it may want to think of the fact that I want the most efficient way to drive and the lowest CO2 way because I've only bought a car. So green routing may be more important, right? And looking at how I use the minimum amount of energy and maximum recuperation. So there will be a host of features like that, or with Revive in areas, and a host of features that are easier to implement in an electric car. An example, air conditioning is easier because I run a separate compressor and motor. I don't have to start the engine. So I can even in my garage turn it on before I go. I think that's where it is. Also, electric cars are more sensor heavy, and therefore information is more. And I think there's a last part where electric cars and initial adopters are more tech savvy and unwanted, so you're kind of giving them more information. But you also need this information to communicate to them. We find that today, if you get on the touchscreen and look at how you've driven and everything else, it changes your driving habits. So you can today get on your website and log in and say, how have I driven to everyone compared to Bangalore? And you can have your own social network around it. So there are going to be a lot of things you can play around, which I think are more amenable to probably electrics. But I see fundamental areas of safety and car-to-car communications and a host of other connectivity probably fairly common.
One more question, please.
Yes.
So in the morning, we heard the speakers say that in the whole M2M space, it's probably analytics and data, which is probably going to bring in the profits. So, and you also mentioned analytics while you were speaking. So I was just curious to know how this chunk has come out so far in your connected vehicles and how you see this part bringing in the profits.
So let me give you one example of analytics, right? The battery is the most expensive part of the car. After maybe 7 years, you may want to replace it. But even if you replace it, it may still have 60 to 70% of the energy, which means you could probably still power your house for 2 days. That's the amount of energy you have. So for me, the second life of it, that going into a rural application or a UPS system becomes very important. And if I analyze and project how it is, and I can create an insurance policy around that, and I can create a back-end customer for it, and I can put that into my forward pricing, I create huge. So we've been working now for 4 or 5 years on things like these of data analytics, which means there's a huge value. So I've taken areas that are very high value. So second life of battery is very high. That's one example of analytics. But The second area is using usage patterns and kind of combining that together. And I find that that's another very strong area. The key here is as you start to, you sometimes don't know what you're getting into. You start to analyze it. You start to look at different new business things, and you say, hey, I can make vehicles more efficient. I could do this. You start to see for patterns. So I think we today have at least put on a team, a PhD and a couple of guys who are starting to look at analytics, which we didn't even think of, from a different pair of eyes, you know. And I think we're trying to learn more. While there are 2-3 programs that are fixed, there may be 10 new areas that we may come up with that we're not even aware of today.